My name is Gary Willcox, and I'm 57 years old. I'm originally from the south suburbs of Chicago. I graduated high school in 1972. When I came out of high school, I was nowhere near ready to go on to school. Vietnam was going on. There was an anti-war movement. There were race riots on the south side of Chicago. I mean, there was so much happening, so much turmoil in the United States that my lottery number was 36. I was ready to be drafted, and then Richard Nixon went into the draft, so I never did get drafted. And at that point, I was already working on the railroad and had an apartment, and so everything kind of came to a halt, as far as my education was concerned. At that time, when you got on a job on a railroad, you were pretty much set for life. May of 1974, I transferred to Green Bay and worked for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad up here. And in 1976, I met my wife and we got married. And at 14 years, they pulled out of Green Bay. And I stayed because by that time we had a family going, and Mary's family is from here. I went up to Sturgeon Bay, up to the shipyards, and I worked for 14 months up in the shipyards, and consequently got laid off there when the contract was done. They had built 3 container ships for Sealand Corporation. Then I got a job at a company. At that time it was known as Tech Systems. It's in De Pere, Wisconsin. It's a capital equipment manufacturer. The primary market is commercial printing. About anything other than a press they make for a press line in a commercial printing plant. I started out pretty much welding and building the equipment, a lot of shift work. W.R. Grace owned the company at that time. As time went on, the asbestos lawsuits started coming in, and W.R. Grace was big into the asbestos market, and they took and started to divest all their holdings and sell everything off. And they took and sold us to their biggest competitor in Europe, which was a company called Sequa Corporation. And Sequa married the two companies together, and it became Megtech, and the worldwide headquarters was here in Green Bay. When W.R. Grace owned us, the company just grew, and they were constantly putting on additions and putting in new equipment. And then once the sale took place to Sequa, things kind of slowed down a little bit. And then Sequa ended up selling the business off about 2 years ago to an investment firm. Well, all they're looking at is pulling money out and not putting any money in. It was 2008. We were working 7 days a week. The overtime was there if you wanted it, 10-hour days, 8 on the weekends. And the schedule, it got to the end of the year, and we were looking out, 4 or 5 months, but it was just a cliff. The orders just stopped right after the first of the year, and there was hardly anything on the books, next to nothing. So we knew something was going to happen, and it wasn't going to be good. And at one time, we were up to 440 people in the shop building equipment. I believe currently right now there's about there's about 80 people employed in the plant right now. I've been laid off now since February 1st of 2009. Since we have been through it, I got laid off on the railroad, I got laid off in the shipyard, I've laid off a couple times at Tech, that we kind of prepare for this because we know we've been through it and we don't want to, suffer too much of a hardship because of it. That was my first thought. This is just another little dip, but then the economy, you could just see it sliding further and further, and the market was dropping, and we're seeing our investments going right down the down the hole. And so after a while you think, well, I got to do something here. Out of, crying out loud, there had to be a good 60, 70 employers that I had contacted. I heard rejection letters maybe back from 4 of them. Other than that, I didn't hear anything from any of them. The TAA benefit and the TRA benefit, one's the Trade Adjustment Act and one's the Trade Readjustment Act. And I'm not exactly sure which is paying for which, but one is paying for schooling and one is paying for income funding. And this is all part of the fact that my job was affected by work going overseas. And I had an idea. I wanted to get into a business program of some sort. Last fall, after being out of school for 37 years, going back and starting in a business management program. So hopefully May of 2011 I'll have my associate degree in business management. Going back to school for me was a little apprehensive, kind of overwhelming. I really wasn't sure what to expect. There was actually a lot of knowledge in this old head that I didn't know existed. You know, is there an ideal job out there for me? That I don't know. To some degree, I've got a fair amount of ignorance in the business world. 10 years ago, I never would have thought this would be going on. You know, I thought that I had enough seniority, that the way the world was going, that I would ride right into my retirement at MegTech. You know, unfortunately, things have changed. Everything has gotten so global that you're almost forced to change. And that's what it's come down to with me, is I'm being forced to change.